With icy peaks piercing the heavens, Mont Blanc stands as a titan of a mountain, the highest in Western Europe. It's a place of great beauty and terror, the backdrop for numerous victories and tragedies alike. Join us on our journey to uncover some of Mont Blanc's most chilling stories. There was one thing Peter Saunders and his 12-year-old son Charlie loved more than anything in the world, and that was the great outdoors. The pair would often venture together on weekend-long trips in the mountains. It was March 16, 2013. The father and son duo had flown from their home in the UK to the French Alps near Chamonix. They had been planning the trip for a while now, choosing the most promising hike, one that 48-year-old Peter Saunders deemed fitting. Saunders, who was an experienced skier and hiker, had mapped out the route. He wanted to make sure the trip would be safe enough for his young son. At that time of year, Mont Blanc was covered in snow, but the weather forecast was favorable. Before departing, Peter had reassured his wife Sandra that he knew what he was doing. Charlie was going to be safe on the gentle, fun walk. Relieved by her husband's words, Sandra bade them goodbye. It was the last time she ever saw them alive. The morning was indeed warm. Peter and his son Charlie took the chairlift from Bossons village to the bottom of Bossons Glacier, reaching an altitude of 4,500 feet. They were beyond happy to have this opportunity to bond and explore. They planned to have a full day of skiing the next day, the complete package for a snowy trip. Once they reached the bottom of Bossons Glacier, the pair set off, making their way up the gentle slopes. As Peter and Charlie made their ascent up Mont Blanc, there was no sign of danger. Back home in Buckingham, Sandra Saunders was happy to receive a text message and photo from her husband, saying they were having a great time. At some point, though, Peter and Charlie found themselves facing a decision. They had made a lot of progress throughout the day, reaching their goal faster than they'd imagined. Yet the day was so sunny and beautiful. What if they continued hiking for a bit longer before turning back? They decided to keep hiking, but perhaps unbeknownst to them, their footsteps led them to La Jonction, a very popular hike that tourists flock to, especially in the summer. But as Peter and Charlie Saunders were about to find out, La Jonction isn't an easy hike. On the contrary, experts deem the rocky spur quite difficult and treacherous, with some areas needing a lot of experience and precaution to be navigated. They kept walking. Below them stood the very steep Couloir des Pyramides, a deep gully. It all happened in a matter of seconds. 12-year-old Charlie Saunders fell down the couloir, disappearing from his father's sight. Blind panic overtook Peter. His son was gone, as if swallowed by the mountain. With trembling hands, Peter managed to call the emergency center in Annecy. It was just before 3 p.m. He managed to tell the authorities that he was in Les Bossons and that his son had fallen. The call was transferred to the mountain police in Chamonix, but Peter couldn't answer their questions. He was frantic. The only coherent sound was that of his footsteps and labored breathing. Then, silence. The call was cut off. The mountain police kept calling to no avail. As hours passed, Sandra Saunders wondered why her husband failed to answer her calls. In the meantime, police had alerted the helicopter rescue, but the vast area proved it almost impossible for them to find the father and son. 3 sweeps were carried out. They even used infrared cameras after dark, but there was no trace of Peter and Charlie. Sandra was contacted late in the evening and asked for help. Authorities used the photo Peter had sent her to pinpoint the likely area of interest. Peter and Charlie Saunders' bodies were discovered and retrieved early the following morning, on Sunday, March 17. The boy had fallen nearly 1,000 feet down the gully. His father was found 150 feet above him. They were at an altitude of about 5,000 feet on the 15,781-foot mountain. Both of them were wearing normal climbing boots, unsuitable in an area where climbers usually wear shoes with spikes and other specialist gear in winter. Peter and Charlie Saunders are remembered for their joint love of the outdoors and for their sunny dispositions. Patrice Hiver was a mountain man through and through. He wanted to dedicate his life to rocky slopes, breathtaking views, and to the awe-inspiring song of the wild that one can only hear up there amidst the clouds. He was sure of it, a 23-year-old man who had figured it out. But how could he know what fate had in store for him? The year was 1982. Mont Blanc was as tall and proud as ever, a true delight for all mountain enthusiasts. Patrice Hiver was more than a mountain enthusiast. In fact, the French native was training to be a mountain guide in France's INSA National Ski and Mountaineering School in Chamonix. He was on his way to becoming a certified expert on all things Mont Blanc. It was March 1st, 1982. The season was incredibly favorable for mountain activities. The weather was milder than usual. On that day, Hiver decided to undertake a solo trek up to Mont Blanc's summit and then ski down the face of the mountain. The calm weather indicated to the young man that he would likely have an uncomplicated climb, at least to his standards. Despite this, it's worthy to note that his chosen route was on the Mont Blanc face, a uniquely beautiful and highly difficult climb. Hiver set off in the morning, dressed appropriately. The day was sunny, which encouraged him, but fate is ever-changing, and on a titan of a mountain such as Mont Blanc, so is the weather. A mighty storm started just hours after Hiver embarked on his journey. The howling winds intensified the snowfall, making any attempts to climb farther virtually impossible. Hiver was in great danger. The storm eventually calmed down a few days later. Another mountaineer had been stranded by the unforgiving weather. He was found 2 days later, but Patrice Hiver never made it off the mountain. Days of rescue searches proved futile, and his family had to make their peace with Patrice's fate. He had disappeared without a trace, or so everyone thought, until July 2014, when 2 climbers found a body on the Talefre Glacier at an altitude of more than 8,500 feet. The Chamonix Gendarmerie Rescue Service was alerted immediately. The authorities were able to identify the body straight away. It belonged to Patrice Hiver. He still had his ID papers, as well as all of his equipment, including his skis. But not everyone was relieved to hear the news. When Patrice's father, 82-year-old Gerard Hiver, was informed that his son's body had been found, he said it was a blow. To him, it was like Patrice had died again. He was better on a mountain than in a coffin. He was in his element, Gerard said. Gerard Hiver believed his son had reached the summit of Mont Blanc and had decided to return down the other side, on the so-called Whymper Corridor, despite the concerning weather. The official theory is that Patrice Hiver fell to his death in a crevasse, where the ice helped preserve his body for over 3 decades before it was ultimately ejected. Hiver's family told authorities they wanted to return him to the mountain. As such, they planned to go to the glacier and scatter his ashes there, a true and final resting place for such a passionate mountain man. Mountains are fascinating and powerful, offering a break from everyday life. They draw people into the wild, pushing some to explore further than they should, and sometimes this can be dangerous. For Kate Vokes, her son Archie, and 3 other members of their family, December 28, 2023 started out beautifully. The family, which hailed from Manchester, was on vacation near Mont Blanc. They enjoyed skiing. 22-year-old Archie Vokes, who was a personal trainer back home in Manchester, had even achieved his Level 1 ski instructor qualification in Canada the previous year. The snow was just right on the mountain that Thursday. That morning, Archie, Kate, and their family met up with another group to go for an epic day of skiing. The group was led by an instructor whom the Vokes had known for years. Together, the group of 8 set off to find the perfect spot for their day of fun. The weather was a bit strange. It had snowed, but it had also rained. Then again, it was sunny outside. It didn't seem unreasonable to ski under those conditions. Finally, the group decided on a slope near Saint-Gervais-les-Bains, a ski resort in the Haute-Savoie region near Chamonix. The designated slopes are popular with tourists from all around the world. They're exciting, but even more importantly, they're safe. But not everyone looks for safety, and there are some skiers out there who swear by the greatness of unmarked routes. Kate and Archie's group decided to take the risk and ski far outside the designated slopes. Maybe it was simply because they were confident in their abilities, or maybe it was because they were accompanied by a ski instructor. Maybe they liked the scenery better, or maybe they wanted a real challenge, one that would prove more rewarding than most. What they didn't know, though, was that they weren't the only ones who had chosen to take a risk that day. Somewhere above the Vosges, another group was making the most out of the snow and the more abrupt slope. The avalanche hit at about 15:30 local time. It was over 1,300 feet wide. It occurred at an altitude of more than 7,500 feet. We can only imagine the blinding panic the group felt as the huge wave of snow came crashing down toward them. Miraculously, 5 of the 8 people in the group managed to outrun the avalanche, saving themselves from the white inferno. Kate Vokes' father, as well as her husband, were among those who escaped the danger. But Kate and her son Archie, as well as the ski instructor, weren't so lucky. The avalanche buried them, leaving nothing but dread in its wake. Mountain police were called on the spot. A major search and rescue operation was launched. Over the next few hours, 20 people, 2 dog teams, a doctor, and 2 helicopters worked tirelessly to find the missing 3. They found the ski instructor first. The man was buried, but he was also wearing an avalanche transceiver, the type of emergency locator beacon which emits signals. He was quickly found. Thankfully, the man was almost unscathed. The only injuries he sustained were minor. But the search for Kate and Archie Vokes continued for several hours. Their ski suits weren't fitted with avalanche transceivers, which made the search so much harder. The mother and son were finally found after 5 hours. Both of them were dead. Mountain police believe the avalanche appeared to have been set off by another group of skiers higher up the slope. A manslaughter investigation was opened, with the cause of the avalanche being investigated. In a statement, Kate and Archie's family said, "We are beyond heartbroken at the loss of our beloved, wonderful Kate and Archie. Words cannot express how terrible we all feel, nor the hole in our lives that has been left by this tragic accident. We kindly ask for privacy as we grieve together as a family." With Kate Vokes being the chair of the Oglesby Charitable Trust, a director of her family-owned property company, Bruntwood, deputy chair of the Royal Exchange Theatre, and a trustee of charities Shared Health and Focus Care, many other people mourned the loss of the mother and son. Kate and Archie weren't the only ones who lost their lives in the avalanche on December 28th. A 31-year-old hiker was also killed on a separate slope. Given the circumstances in which the avalanche had occurred, the president of the Association of Mountain Station Mayors said risk is always present off-piste. Even professionals are subjected to great perils when they venture outside designated slopes out there. Aaron Cook's passion for paragliding took him to some of the most breathtaking landscapes on Earth. For most of us, the sport might seem unnecessarily risky, but the Cook, soaring over snowy peaks, was part of his very being. He had done it countless times, always ready for the rush of adrenaline in his veins, as well as for the dazzling views of the world below. At 38 years old, Cook was an experienced paraglider. His experience also made him cautious, meaning he was always appropriately equipped for his adventures. In an ideal world, caution and expertise are enough to save us from the worst. But this isn't an ideal world. It was July 17, 2015, and Aaron Cook was ready for yet another one of his adventures, gliding high over his beloved valley. Cook was originally from New Zealand, but resided in Chamonix, France, where he and his partner ran a bed and breakfast for international tourists. Cook loved waking up surrounded by the Chamonix Valley, with Mont Blanc close by. The mountain's enormous beauty inspired him. Cook was more than a paraglider. He was also a keen skier, snowboarder, trail runner, and climber. He always found something to do in Chamonix, regardless of the season or weather conditions. On that sunny Friday, Aaron Cook had one goal: get on top of the Argentière Glacier, take off with his paraglider, fly for a few hours, and then get back home to his chalet. But fate had other, more sinister plans. From its source to the valley of Chamonix, the Argentière Glacier is 9 kilometers long. It's one of the larger glaciers in the Mont Blanc Massif. Its high altitude makes it a perfect spot for paragliding since it provides a picturesque view of the valley below. Cook was joined by another paraglider. They set off together. Cook eventually found a place to take off amidst the icy peaks of the glacier. Then, checking his equipment, ensuring every strap was in its place, the man was ready to fly. He took off, or at least he tried to, as Aaron Cook tried to pass between two imposing hanging glaciers. One of his boots struck an unforgiving column of glacial ice. The force of the impact was enough to alter his course. Cook's paragliding partner watched in horror as the 38-year-old man plummeted almost 100 feet below. Chamonix Search and Rescue was immediately alerted. The emergency service reached the site of the accident and found Aaron Cook. He was dead. Earlier that July, Cook had posted a photo on Facebook. He had taken it as he flew into Chamonix after a 4-hour flight around Mont Blanc Massif. The man would often post photos or even videos on YouTube to keep his friends and family up to date with his latest adventures. He was well respected in the paragliding community. His death came as a shock to everyone who knew him, but especially to his family, who was back home in New Zealand. Family members had to set up Give a Little fundraising pages in order to afford flying to France for Cook's funeral. International friends and family attended Aaron Cook's funeral service on Friday, July 24th. Cook's ashes were spread over his beloved valley and mountains. In the eyes of everyone who knew him, Cook was more a kid of Europe rather than a kid of New Zealand. Aaron Cook is remembered as a bubbly and enthusiastic person who touched the lives of everyone who knew him. Adèle Milot was 26 years old, an ex-championship winning athlete, and a mountain guide in training. Born with a passion for the mountains, Milot had risen to prominence as a skimo prodigy in her native France. Skimo, or ski mountaineering, involves climbing mountains and then skiing down them. It's an exciting sport that's set to make its Winter Olympics debut in 2026. Milot won the World Championship in the sport in 2017 and was a European champion in 2018. She retired from the sport in 2019 when she decided to take her love for mountains to another level and become a professional mountain guide. From then on, Milot spent her time climbing in the French Alps, trying to become as familiar with their twists and turns as possible. Her adventurous spirit and love for the outdoors defined her, but it was the same characteristics that ultimately led the young woman to her death. On August 12, 2022, Adèle Milot and a friend, an unnamed 30-year-old woman, set out to scale the Aiguille de Payne in the Mont Blanc Massif. The route they had chosen wasn't particularly difficult, but that season had different conditions than usual ones. France had undergone its hottest July since records began, and this also affected Mont Blanc. Rising temperatures and heat waves have significant impacts on its climbing routes, with some paths being closed off because of rockfall danger. Milot and her friend weren't on a closed route, but the recent droughts in the area had made hiking in the Alps more dangerous overall. Still, they weren't even the only people scaling the mountain that day, but Mont Blanc chose to claim them. At some point during their climb, tragedy struck. Other climbers watched helplessly as the two women lost their footing. In an instant, the two women fell down the mountain. Despite being almost frozen with shock, the other group of mountaineers managed to call for help. Seeing the two women fall to their deaths greatly affected the others. They couldn't continue the climb, so they had to be lifted off the mountain. Although the exact circumstances of the fall are unknown, authorities believe the two women were roped together when the accident occurred. Even more, authorities have ruled out a rock fall as the cause. Tributes flooded in for Milo's and her climbing partner, whose identity remained unnamed. Olivier Grébert, the chairman of the Company of Guides of Chamonix, spoke of Milo's as a luminous young woman, expressing the profound sorrow felt by the entire company. Even the Minister of Sports at the time tweeted a tribute, expressing her deep sadness caused by the death of Adèle Milos and the woman who was by her side.